Good evening and welcome to the Italian Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Stefano Mancini, and as always, I'd like to thank you, my listeners, for joining me today. I had the very special treat of being able to interview someone who specializes in citizenship in Italy. So earlier today, I was able to record a conversation. And this is a very important topic, and it's a very emotional topic. As folks are listening know, the Italian government has just changed the laws on who is eligible for citizenship. So again, I was able to have a call with the Italian Citizenship Assistance Office near Bologna, and Marco's going to join me. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump ahead and let's listen to the interview with Marco because I think he provides some very good information. But more than anything, if you are thinking about getting your citizenship and you feel like, well, this law changed and I can't do it, hold on. There's always a way. So let's listen to that interview now. All right. So I'm joined by Marco Permunian from the Italian Citizenship Assistance Office near Bologna, if I'm not mistaken. Marco, is that correct?
Yes, we're based in northern Italy in the Veneto region.
Fantastic. Now, Marco, obviously I brought you on as a guest for the show today because there is a lot of consternation regarding the changes in the Italian laws. And as folks in the Pittsburgh area know, I am the honorary consulate here for the Italian government, and I receive a lot of requests for services for Italian citizenship, or excuse me, for Italian citizens, but I also receive a lot of inquiries on citizenship. So there were a lot of people going through the process of trying to acquire their dual citizenship. But with the changes in the laws, a lot of them now have found themselves ineligible to receive their citizenship. So, Marco, I wanted to kind of bring you on the show today to talk about, the law, the changes in the law, and what that means for folks. But more importantly, let's talk about folks that were in the process. So, Marco, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So the law changed drastically on March the 28th with the Tajani decree. The Italian government chose to limit the ability to apply for citizenship by descent going forward. So now the rules that are in place right now only allow for people to apply if they have an Italian parent or grandparent who never became a citizen in another country. Initially, the decree stated something else on March the 28th of 2025, meaning that the initial text of the decree allowed for people to apply as long as they had an Italian-born parent or grandparent. So there was a limitation to the second generation, but the only requirement was to have a parent or grandparent who was born in Italy. When the law was reviewed by the parliament and the decree was converted into a regular law, the text changed. And now, ever since the Chamber of Deputies approved the final text on May the 20th, it is only possible to use a parent or grandparent who was an Italian citizen exclusively at the time of their death, or that is right now, if the parent or grandparent is alive, they need to be exclusively Italian citizens. So it is an important limitation for people who decide to go through the process right now. But we, as a firm, believe that there are several ways and several paths that can be used by people that were in the process to be able to still gain Italian citizenship under the old rules, despite the Tajani decree.
I want to go back and ask something. I have a lot of people that come into my office, and let's start with the renouncing of citizenship. Because I have a lot of people that come into my office that say, I was a kid when my father or my grandparents, or whatever, renounced their citizenship, mostly children to parents. So they're saying, look, I was a minor, so I didn't have the choice to be an Italian citizen because my parents renounced their Italian citizenship, often to become an American citizen. How does that, let's start there. How does the law impact those people whose parents renounced their citizenship? Let's say the parent was an Italian citizen when the child was born, and then the parent renounced their Italian citizenship. Does that matter?
If both the parent and the child were born in Italy, unfortunately, the renunciation affected both the parent who was making the decision and the child itself. Again, if they were both born in Italy, and we believe that the renunciation and the fact that the renunciation affected the child as well was a valid consequence. So we believe that unfortunately these people that were minors when their parent became naturalized, if they were also born in Italy, that they cannot qualify. However, there's a different category of people who was a minor when their parent became naturalized, but these people were born in the US. And these people, under the old rules, could get their Italian citizenship recognized. However, under the new rules, it looks like it's no longer possible because they have a parent who became naturalized. And under the new rules, it doesn't matter when exactly the parent became naturalized. And if you have a parent who became naturalized, that's it. You can no longer qualify for citizenship under the new rules. But like I said, we believe that there are ways to use the old rules. There are several paths that can be taken into consideration now to either challenge the new rules or use the old rules.
Now let's talk about that, because you make a good point. There are a lot of people now, but I want to back up about something really quickly. So I want to make this comment. Having now that I am the honorary consulate here, I see a lot of people coming in to my office that are quote Italian citizens. And unfortunately, they are so far removed from Italy. They don't speak Italian. They don't even have Italian last names. In some cases, they've never even been to Italian. It seems to be like they're collecting passports, collecting citizenships. I mean, I have people from Morocco who've, grew up in South America. They're now U.S. citizens, but they had a great 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 grandparent who was an Italian citizen. How do the Italians, say in Italy, what's been their reception in Italy for the law? Because I'll tell you, I'm very torn on it. I did receive my citizenship through my great grandfather, but I know a lot of people that are trying to do the same path. Now they're cut off. But again, they have no real, they have no cultural roots to the country. So I'm very torn. On one hand, if I tried to do it now, I wouldn't get my citizenship. On the other hand, I understand that there is a huge gap between a lot of people trying to get their citizenship and the actual roots in Italy. So how has the law been received in Italy?
So I'll tell you this, the applications for citizenship by descent are not really discussed in Italy by Italians who were born and live in Italy. So if you talk to just random people on the street in Italy and you tell them what you think about people applying for citizenship by descent, they have no idea what you're talking about. So most of the average Italian don't know even that there is the possibility, or there was the possibility, of applying for citizenship by descent. So they have a lot to say regarding the ability to apply for citizenship through residency or naturalization for people who reside in Italy for a number of years. And as a matter of fact, there is a referendum that is happening at the beginning of June regarding potentially decreasing the number of years that are required to apply for citizenship through residency. They're proposing to decrease the number from 10 to 5 years. And there are a lot of talks and a lot of opinions about that that specific process that involves mostly people from Eastern Europe, Northern Africa. But if you ask somebody in Italy what they think about Americans or South Americans that want to apply for citizenship by descent, they don't know what you're talking about. So I wouldn't say that there's a problem regarding the reception of the law. The law was made because the government had a problem with too many applications that were being filed through the Italian consulates and the Italian courts, as well as it seems like the European Union recognized that the number of people that were potentially eligible were too many. Of course, we can all disagree with the fact that the change that they made was not properly done and that there are a lot of problems with the change, but I'm saying the reasons were not, you know, connected to the fact that the average Italian citizen had a problem with these applications. It was a different kind of issue related to the workload of the consulate and Italian courts.
And I can tell you, I do not process anything citizenship related, but off the record, I do try and provide assistance, again, under the old laws, because I had gone through it. So I had an idea of what to tell people, what you need, how to trace your lineage back to Italy. But I will tell you what's interesting is that you will have a lot of people voting in Italian elections that have never lived in Italy because they're registered with the comunes, and so they get their ballots. And it does beg the question, what is the influence, of people living overseas that have nothing to do with Italy but yet are eligible to vote. Now, again, I don't want to debate that right now, but it is. But I think for people that are listening, I think you have to understand, to your point, Marco, one, this does clog up the consulates. They deal with a lot of citizenship cases. And I think a lot of people have to ask themselves, why do you want your Italian citizenship if you don't want to live there, if you don't speak the language, if you have no real connection? And I think that's the problem that the people living overseas have to, address. Now, Marco, let's come back to, methods. There were people in what we call the pipeline. There were people in the process. It does not appear that there was a grace period for this. Are you guys fighting that? Are other law firms fighting that grace period?
Before I answer that question, I'll go back to what you mentioned a moment ago. And yes, it was a concern, at least that is what the government said regarding people becoming Italian citizens and living abroad with no connections to Italy. But I can tell you also that the vast majority of Americans was eligible to apply through a grandparent or great grandparent who was born in Italy. In several cases, my clients, they met the grandparent and great grandparent. They spoke Italian or they understood the Italian language or the dialect when it was spoken in the house. They had a real connection with their roots. And so I'd say that the Italian American community is indeed one of the communities in the US that I admire the most because they have a real connection with their origins. And it is not true that people were going back to a very distant ancestor. The government made some stupid examples regarding people using a great grandparent, which is a nonsense. Most people were using a quite close relative to get Italian citizenship. They were very proud and connected to their origins, and so I think there were other ways to make a change. And what the government did was, of course, retroactive, unjust, too sudden, with no grace period, like you said. So I don't think it was done properly. But with that said, like you mentioned, there were a lot of people in the process of gathering documents or preparing to apply for citizenship. And there are several ways to use the old rules, in my opinion. One of the most popular ways is to apply through the courts and use the argument that when you wanted to apply through the Italian consulate, there were no appointments, which is the truth. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
rules.
I want to emphasize that, Marco, and I'll give you a personal example. My sister has been trying for over a year just to get an appointment. She couldn't even get an appointment, and she's not alone. I can tell you a ton of people. They can't even get an appointment. We're talking an appointment for 2 years out. We're not talking an appointment for next week. We're saying, I need to wait a year to get an appointment for 2 years. So I wanted to mention, I wanted to chime in on there because I am personally aware of that problem.
Correct. So there were people that were trying to get an appointment for months, sometimes years, and those few lucky individuals who were able to get an appointment, they're now able to use the old rules because the decree, the Tajani decree, will be amended in a way that will allow people who were able to secure an appointment to attend their appointment, even if the appointment will be in years from now, and use the old rules. So why should those few lucky individuals be able to use the old rules in 5 years from now at their appointment just because they were able to secure one prior to the decree, and somebody who was looking for an appointment, actively looking for an appointment for months and years, and was simply unlucky because the reality is that it was a lottery, so you needed to be lucky to get an appointment. So why should those individuals not be able to use the old rules? So this is an argument that my firm is making in court, and we strongly believe that is a very valid argument that indicates that the old rules should be applicable to these individuals who were actively looking for an appointment and simply couldn't get one.
Now, let's kind of chime in that right now because are the courts, I'm going to imagine the answer is yes, but are the courts hearing challenges to the law itself right now?
Of course, once you petition the court, you want to include as many arguments as possible that go in your favor. And many other attorneys, including myself, are, of course, also challenging the law itself. I just want to state that, in my opinion, a practical argument, meaning the lack of appointments, could be potentially more effective than the argument that the law is against the Italian Constitution. So, of course, that is an argument that can be made, that should be made, because the law was made in a way that makes it clearly discriminatory and unconstitutional. But of course, those are arguments that are harder to make. And I think the practical arguments that there were no appointments available for a long time is a better one.
And it's a true. The nice thing about that, Marco, is let me know if you want a list of people that will tell you that I couldn't get an appointment and they have been waiting and waiting and waiting. And in fact, people that had appointments in some cases, once the law kicked in, I won't pick on this particular consulate because I do work with them. They canceled all the appointments. They said, well, we're not processing anymore. The new law kicked in, and so everyone got their appointments canceled, and they wouldn't open it up. And then they only opened it up for first generation, and that meant you're an Italian living in America and you have a kid, so you're still an Italian. You had a kid. That's the only appointments they're taking to process those kids. So even under the new law, if my grandfather was an Italian citizen born in Italy, never renounced his citizenship, I'm still eligible for my citizenship, but I still can't get an appointment. So even under the new law, there's a problem getting citizenships processed with the consulates. So your thoughts?
Regarding what you just said, even before the decree went into effect, we as a firm were already petitioning the Italian courts for countless clients who were unable to get an appointment. And which is kind of what you just said right now, that if you wanted to apply right now because you are one of the ones that still qualifies under the new rules, you're going to have a hard time getting an appointment. And of course, the consulate could be definitely more efficient, but there's just so much that they can do because there are very many people that can qualify for Italian citizenship or that could qualify for Italian citizenship. But definitely there was something more that could have been done to assist all of these individuals who were looking to apply. But regardless, if the law allows you to make an application, you should actually be allowed to make an application. So it's ridiculous that there is a law that allows you to apply for citizenship by descent, and then you can't just submit an application because there is nowhere that you can submit your application. So the filings in the courts will continue, probably even for the individuals that still qualify now for citizenship.
Let me ask you, What do you think, though? Do you think that there is a fair point where you would say, listen, you can only go back this far to claim your citizenship? Like, do you think there is a limit to how far back you can go ancestry wise?
I do believe that the limit, whenever it's set, and it was set by the government, is just set arbitrarily. So who am I or the government to draw a line and decide uh, who is more connected
Right.
to the relatives? It is not true that if you have a grandparent, you are more Italian than somebody who has a great grandparent, or vice versa. If you have a parent, you are more Italian than somebody who has a grandparent. So also, regardless, the law, the way in which the law is made in Italy and was made, was to allow the individuals that emigrated from Italy to other countries to potentially return to their homeland. Now they're changing that principle, where the law was made in a way that would have allowed any descendant of somebody who basically escaped to be able to gain their citizenship. But now, once they realized that, according to what they think, it's maybe too many people, now they want to limit that. So I think, they did something that they shouldn't have done, or they should have done it differently. Let's keep in mind that they regulated this issue with an emergency decree, which is for emergency situations, and the emergency decree went into effect the day before, and they kept it secret. So nobody saw this coming because they kept it secret. So they wanted to blindside people. I think that is not the way that you want to treat people who truly want to become Italians and are connected to their origins.
Well, I'll tell you, like I said, I personally believe that there should be, I don't want to say limits, but there should be something that shows that you maintain or keep a connection in some form. To your point, whether it's a great grandparent or a great great grandparent, who are we to say? I do think that they had every right, for example, to have said, okay, if you want to claim your Italian citizenship, you should be somewhat, fluent in the Italian language. Okay, they do that for spouses. So if I marry a woman and she wants to become an Italian citizen, she has to speak the language after so many years of marriage. Okay, I understand that. But you're literally cutting off people with bloodlines, but at the same time, they might be very connected to the community, whereas you might have somebody, like I said, has never been there, does has no intention to go back. Interesting, you use that phrase, to go back. They don't speak the language. They're just more or less doing it for and unfortunately, I see this. People are doing it for a status. Look at me. I've got my Italian passport. I can skip the line in Europe. So I do think there are people that do it for the wrong reasons. So I agree with you, though. It shouldn't have just been a blanket, and it shouldn't have been done almost hastily and in secret. But I do believe that there are some things that needed to change. Marco, I'm going to give you the last thoughts.
Sure. So let me tell you that, as you said, some people were doing this for other reasons that have nothing to do with being proud of their Italian ancestry. But I have to say that a lot of people, a lot of my clients, were telling me that this law broke their heart. So they really were so proud of becoming Italian citizens, and they were so hurt emotionally by a law that stripped them away from the right to become Italians. That was their birthright. And probably the last thought that I have is that there was also another way to do this, which was to make the law applicable only to those who were born after the law, not the people that were born before. That could have been probably a better way to go.
I definitely agree that there should have been some kind of grandfathering in there. I didn't like the abruptness. I do believe I don't speak Italian very, parlo italiano, però non parlo abbastanza bene, but I can survive. I do believe there should have been some, at least a language requirement, at least a basic language requirement, something to force people to study the culture a little more. But Marco, listen, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. We've been trying to connect for a while, so I appreciate you spending time with me today. By the way, before we joined the call, one last kind of funny thing. Federica sort of heard me, somebody, I don't know if you heard it, Federica, but somebody was yelling in my ear, and that was somebody that was being very passionate about the new law. And I literally had to hang up when I said, listen, I got to go. So to your point, Marco, there are some very angry people here in the United States. And I know that a lot of the Italian American organizations are sending letters to the Italian government, asking them to reconsider or at least make changes. You know, the absurdity of the abruptness of the law to just come down and say, okay, effective now, that was it's pretty damning in a way. So I definitely don't agree with the way they went about it, but I do think something needed to be changed, just the way things are going. So Marco, how can folks get a hold of you? I would love to encourage folks to reach out to you and possibly employ your services. That's a hint because I have some family members that may be in the situation we just described. So we're definitely going to talk, but how can folks get a hold of you?
People can contact us through our website, ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com. For information about Italian citizenship and the most recent updates, we also have a very popular podcast on YouTube. The name of the channel is Italian Citizenship Assistance.
Perfect. Thank you, Marco. And folks that are listening, I'm going to put that link down in the description, and I encourage you to reach out. And if you are serious about getting your citizenship, don't give up. There are ways for you to acquire your citizenship. You know, keep trying if you really want it. I believe that there's always a way. And if worst case scenario, you have to go move to Italy, I'm sure there are worse things you could do. So Marco, thank you very much. Federica has been on the call, but she's been very quiet. So I want to thank Federica for joining us as well. So thank you all very much. And folks, I'll be right back after these messages. Hello, Bucko fans. This is Steve Stefano Mancini, international award-winning filmmaker and host of the award-winning Italian Impact podcast. Join us in celebrating the Italian community on August 23rd as the Pirates take on the Colorado Rockies. This special offer includes an exclusive Pirates co-branded Italian hat and loaded value, good to use on concessions and merchandise on the day of the game. Also, a portion of each ticket will be donated to a local Italian charity. So come experience a unique blend of sports, culture, and community during Italian Heritage Night at PNC Park. Grazie, ci vediamo.
Ciao, Chrissy. Your Italian got so much better. Brava.
Grazie. It's because I learned the best way possible.
How so?
Well, I learned that with apps, grammar books, and even YouTube videos, I could only get so far. I had to immerse myself. I noticed I did best when I was in Italy visiting family. That's where my level really soared.
And wow, did it work?
Thanks. I became much more confident, fast. That's why I created Footsteps Through Time. It's an Italian language experience. You don't just take Italian classes, you immerse yourself in a real Italian village. With lots of fun activities and excursions, it's life-changing.
I see. So, no more boring grammar, impersonal apps, just real conversations, real culture, and delicious food, of course.
Exactly. I'm so excited about this. Learn Italian by actually becoming part of the local community for a week and living it. So if you've been dreaming of Italy and the language, check out Footsteps Through Time in Italy.com. Book now and join the experience.
Andiamo!
Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. For all of your plumbing needs, be sure to try Palucci Plumbing. Nick and the team have decades of experience and will get you back up and running. For more information, call Palucci Plumbing at 412-782-5050. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support. And we want to thank La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei, the only nonprofit school in Pittsburgh endorsed by the Italian Consulate. If you're interested in learning Italian or have your children being immersed in the Italian culture and language, be sure to give them a call at 412-404-7070. And that's La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei. We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074. All right, I want to thank again Marco for joining me. Thanks for sticking around. But again, just real quick, what I wanted to say is, I am one of those people that had I tried to get my citizenship now, I would not have been eligible under the new laws. So it was my great-grandparents that I got my citizenship. So for me, I personally appreciate and understand, the anger in this. In fact, now the way it's written, my kids can't become Italian citizens. So on one hand, I understand the anger, with folks that are trying to get their citizenship. Maybe you've been in the process. As like Marco said, there's still a way. So don't give up. Reach out. I'll put his link down there. If you've got another attorney, go for it. I'm going to put his link out there in the description so you can reach out to him and maybe give him your information, talk about what's going on with you and see if they can help you. But I also want to say something else. As the honorary consular here in Pittsburgh, I see a lot of people that want to get their citizenship, or people that are citizens coming in to get their passports. And one thing that does sort of frustrate me, look, you've got to ask yourself, why do you want to become an Italian citizen? If it's just to collect a passport or for a status thing, I would tell you to save your money, don't bother. But if you feel there is a real connection with Italy, maybe you've even got relatives still alive back there, then I say go for it. But a couple of things to think about. One, do you know the culture in Italy, or do you know the Italian-American culture? Because things have changed over there. I go over there every year, and I think a lot of, and I've had this conversation before, I think a lot of people still think that Italy is the way it was when their great-grandparents came over, 80, 100 years ago. It's not. And I would encourage you, if you've never been there, please go visit Italy so you can see what Italy is. Another thing I would ask, if you really want to pursue your citizenship, why not learn the language? Why not connect? Why not go over there and actually speak some Italian? You don't have to be fluent, but speak some Italian. Prove that you're serious about connecting with the culture and not just about saying, look at me, I've got a passport. And finally, I would say, and this is something that was near and dear to my heart, is knowing that your family immigrated here maybe 80, 100, maybe even 120 years ago, there's a good chance that you still have some relatives over there. Make the effort. Find out what town your family's from. Try and see if there are any relatives there. A lot's changed. If they immigrated before the war, it's very possible that maybe they were in a town that was destroyed, or maybe people were killed. But have you made the effort to go see if you have relatives over there and tried to connect with them? I think that the Italian government is kind of right to say, listen, we're not going to just give it to you because you had a great-great-great-grandfather that came from Italy. I think you have to prove that it's not just about a status symbol or a passport, that it really is connecting with and understanding the culture. So I would encourage you, whether you want your citizenship or not, if you truly want to say, listen, I'm proud to be an Italian-American or I'm a proud Italian, then go find out what Italy's all about, because that's the only way you're going to truthfully make a self-determination. Hey, is this even something I want to bother with? But more importantly, go connect. Go really connect so that when you're out there and you're talking, you can actually speak from experience versus, just wearing a T-shirt that says, kiss me, I'm 1/18th Italian. So folks, again, I'm not trying to be critical, but I want people to really go connect with the culture. You're listening to this podcast because you have some appreciation for the Italian culture. So do I. And so I encourage you, go learn, a few words in Italian. Take a trip to Italy. Find your relatives. Reach out. Get familiar with the news that's going on over there. Just learn something. Really connect. And then you really have that argument to say, I am an Italian American. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank my guest, Marco, from the Italian Citizenship Assistance Office, again, over near Bologna in Italy. And if you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to questions@ItalianImpactWeekly.com. Again, that's questions@ItalianImpactWeekly.com. Thanks again, folks. Oh, wait, before I go, I want to give a special shout out to my friend and my engineer, Joe Hale, who's celebrating 20 years here at Robert Morris University. So, Joe, thanks again for everything. You started off as just somebody I met that was going to help me with a podcast, and you've become a friend, and I can't wait to go to Italy with you. Thanks again, everyone, and thank you, Joe.